Now to the US, and there again seems to be a preoccupation with Islamophobia, even as Jews are being targeted at university campuses and in major cities across the US. Here is White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre being asked about anti-Semitism, but instead she talks about Islamophobia.
Muslim and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. And certainly President Biden understands that many of our Muslim, Arab Americans and Palestinian American loved ones and neighbors are worried about the hate being directed at their communities. And that is something you heard the president speak to in his address.
Douglas, today I saw footage of Jewish students trapped in a library, not able to leave because there were protesters outside and they feared for their safety. And yet the White House, again, preoccupied with Islamophobia.
Yeah, I saw that same footage, Rita. I also read an account of one of the students these were just Jewish students who had to be locked in a room for their own safety as crowds outside chanted pro-Palestinian slogans. Can you imagine any other community where this would be acceptable? Apparently, by the way, the Jewish students were offered various ways out by some of the college people there, including the possibility they could hide in the attic. You sometimes wonder if anybody has any knowledge of history anymore. Anyway, yes, this is always the norm. It goes back to where we started, Rita. Always the playbook is Jews are murdered by Muslim fanatics. Large majorities of Muslim communities in the West fail to condemn said fanatics. Certain proportions seem to go along with them. Muslims promptly call victim on themselves, and the Jews are blamed. That's the way around. You know, I will guarantee in the days and weeks ahead, there will be no protests of Jews in the West massively targeting Muslim students, for instance, simply for being Muslim. There will not be a campaign of vile harassment on innocent Muslims who happen to be going about their business by large crowds of Jews. But that is the case with Muslims against Jews. And yet it is the Muslims who are still seen as the victims in this situation. And as for the White House, I mean, they just can't decouple these things. They can't just say, look, actually, the statistics such as we have show that anti-Jewish hate crime has massively peaked in all of our countries in the last fortnight, in the last 2 weeks. There has been no massive rise in Islamophobia. But, by the way, if they do want to talk about these two things, they could mention the fact that if there's any such thing as Islamophobia, it comes about because of the behavior of radical Muslims. And if the rest of the Muslims in the world want to do something about so-called Islamophobia, they could do something about the radical Muslims. That's what I'd like to hear about from them.
Now, moving along to publications that were once respected. Scientific American is one such publication. It was once widely trusted and expected to live up to its name. But sadly, Douglas, we've seen even science and medicine corrupted by far-left ideology. In a new piece by two academics, we had this lunacy published, and I'll quote here: "The inequity between male and female athletes is a result not of inherent biological differences between the sexes, but of biases in how they are treated in sports." Douglas, it's frightening when even the field of science is abandoning evidence-based theories in favour of ideology.
It is. It's just amazing, isn't it? I mean, how can anybody claim that with a straight face? But they do, and they claim it with a straight academic face. This is one of the ways we can tell in our era with 100% certainty if we are being lied to, and if a publication is worth reading or not. Once this woke mind virus has infected an organization, infected a publication, infected the brain of an individual, we know that they are effectively lost. They can be helped back sometimes from this extreme mental defect, but not always. And I suppose it's our decision one by one whether we just write people like Scientific American off, or at some point allow them to try to go and dry themselves out from this disastrous form of thinking. I'd like to see them dry themselves out. Sadly, too many people have drunk too deep from this well.
Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time this evening.
It's a great pleasure as always.